Welcome. Welcome to Satsang. As always, we start Satsang with a question that comes in advance from our family joining us from all over the world. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. So there's a microphone right there in the middle. If you have a question, feel free to just come up to the mic, share your name, share where you're from, and share the question. But first we'll start with one that has come from our online, internet-based family. How do I live a life with no expectations? You know, I actually think the teaching on expectation has to be amended a little bit. We're all taught have no expectations. The problem is, I don't think that you could actually live if you had any strong desire, wish to stay alive, to be happy. You couldn't live with no expectations at all. For example, we have to believe that Ganga is not going to rise up in like a tsunami and kind of sweep us all away, or we could never do arti. I mean, could you imagine if you didn't have the expectation that there wasn't going to be a flood, that Ganga was going to stay in her banks? If we had no expectation like that, it would be very nerve-wracking, the exact opposite of the peace that we feel, to stand there. If at any moment she could rise up 20, 30 feet and sweep us all away, and we didn't expect that she wouldn't, we couldn't do arti. If we didn't expect that whoever built this room, this hall, this building, did it well, that they hadn't just like faked their engineering degree or, bought it online or something like that, and that the roof wasn't going to fall on us, we couldn't sit here. We have to have an expectation that the people who built this hall knew what they were doing, that they actually were engineers, that they actually were architects, that they actually used good material, that they paid attention, or we couldn't sit here. If we don't have an expectation that the roof isn't going to fall, and I say close your eyes, let's meditate, you couldn't. Because you'd be like, waiting to see if there was some crack in the ceiling somewhere and it was going to fall on you. We have an expectation. If you didn't have an expectation that you would wake up in the morning, that your family members, that your kids would wake up in the morning, you could never go to sleep. There's a bare minimum of expectation that we actually have to live with. The question, I think, is not how not to have any expectations, but rather how not to believe that we're entitled to our expectations being fulfilled. I have to believe, I have to expect that the pilot on the airplane I'm getting on isn't drunk, isn't exhausted, knows what he's doing, have to expect it. But when things that aren't what we want happen, there has to be a fluidity, a flexibility, an awareness that even though I expected that I would be there in the morning, that my loved ones would be there in the morning, that the roof wasn't going to fall, that the house wasn't going to burn down while I was at work, that sometimes things happen other than what we expect. And that none of us has the right to feel entitled to our expectations being fulfilled. That's the problem, because when they're not only are we miserable because the house burned down or a loved one got sick or, God forbid, passed away or something awful happened, but we are also miserable because we believe that God or the universe somehow betrayed us. There's the sadness at what we lost, the sadness at what happened, and there is a feeling of betrayal because we feel like I was entitled to this not to happen. How dare God, how dare the universe let that ceiling fall, let that river rise up, let that illness come. And that's what ends up actually stealing so much of our life. Otherwise, yeah, bad things happen. We've all had them happen. We know they happen. But if they happened without the feeling of betrayal by the divine, by the universe, they wouldn't sting as awfully as they do. We can heal, and we do heal, from the grief, from the loss, from the sadness, from that which happens. I have friends whose homes have burned down twice in the last handful of years. I mean, losing a home to fire is one thing. Losing 2 homes to fire, like just after you rebuild, in a period of 5-6 years, there's loss, there's grief, there's challenge, and yet, if that's not also made worse by feeling like God has betrayed you, or that somehow the universe betrayed you, or that what you were due didn't happen, you will heal. You will move beyond it. What keeps us stuck in many cases forever is a sense that, how dare God, how dare the universe, why my house? Why my kid? Why my brother, sister, mother, father, best friend? Why me? It's not fair. And that it's not fairness adds a sting to all of the rest that happens in life. And that sting frequently is what keeps us from moving on, from actually healing. So have an expectation, no problem. You need it on some level, as I said, to move through the world. But never kid yourself into believing that you somehow deserve, that you are entitled to having that expectation fulfilled. Hold it, but hold it lightly. And hold it with the awareness that things can always be different than you expected. And that the point of our spiritual path is to be able to flow with that. One of my favorite teachings is a teaching by a beautiful saint who used to live right across the river, Swami Dayananji Maharaj, who said the definition of success has nothing to do with how much money you make. Success is how you respond to the inevitable times, it's going to happen to anybody. Rich, poor, nice, mean, spiritual, not spiritual, whoever you are. It is inevitable that there will be times that the universe acts not the way that you want it to. And he said success is how you respond to the inevitable times that the universe does not behave the way you think it should. That's success. So have an expectation, no problem. But when that expectation is not fulfilled, remember, number one, that was inevitable. because it is inevitable that the universe is not going to move exactly according to what you want. And number two, how do you respond? That response, that ability to hold the expectation lightly. Yeah, there will be pain, there will be grief, there will be anger, there will be all of those things that are natural. But as I said, you'll heal from them. If you know from the beginning that it is inevitable that the universe will behave in ways other than the way you want it to. That's success. And it's the only path to that real peace and that real happiness. So, yeah, have an expectation because, as I said, I think that we can't not have them. But hold them very lightly. Yeah, great. Other questions? Yes. And then the woman behind you. No, it's okay. Go first, and then she'll go right after.
Hi. My name is Dev, and I'm from the States. So I'm going to read the...
That's okay.
Yeah. So it's my third year in college right now, and I've built up my own life there.
But can you just speak into the mic a little bit more clearly?
Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. It's my third year in college, and I've built up my own life there, right? I built up like my own way of living, my own priorities and values, and a lifestyle that, and my daily actions surround this lifestyle. And this lifestyle is obviously influenced by the atmosphere that's at my college. I go to UT Austin, and being in the city, there's like a lot of worldly desires, a lot of Maya that surrounds me. And then coming back home or like visiting India can feel really confusing and isolating because I feel like I don't belong. And I get confused on like what I want my life to be. I feel bad and guilty at times because I don't have the same values and priorities as my family does. For a little bit of context, my family is pretty like spiritual. They're not like hung up on like just religious traditions. They do like, if I were to approach religion, I would want to do it similar to my family as well. But I still have like my own desires, and it kind of feels like I'm acting sometimes when I go back home for a little bit until it becomes, eventually it starts feeling more natural. But yeah, I have these two sides, and I constantly contemplate on what I want my values to be and how I want to shape my life, right? Because I remember, like you said yesterday, like we create our own own life, and I don't know what I want that to be like. And growing up, I've realized so much more that I'm like responsible for creating my life. But there's so many choices and paths, and I'm scared I'll like choose the wrong one. So
great question. First of all, even though you're in your third year of college, which I know at this age feels like you're quite old, you're still very young. And I mean that not in a deprecating way, but in a way to hopefully give you some spaciousness in the rush to have it all figured out. You don't have to have it all figured out now. Don't worry. You were raised with a certain set of values, what we call sanskaras, ethics, values, a way of being. Now you're in college, 3 years in. And as you said, you've created a whole different way, whole different lifestyle. No problem. But recognize that the lifestyle that works for you as a student in college may not necessarily be a lifestyle that is going to work for you in a sustained way. A lot of us who went away to college, who lived in dorms, developed habits, ways of being that as we grow afterwards, we realize, oh, that was really fun, but that isn't exactly actually the most conducive way to create the life that I want to live. So don't hold on, don't expect the values, the ethics, the priorities, the lifestyle that you're creating in college is that which is going to be with you forever. You'll see. My instinct is that you will be like the rest of us, and you will look back at some point on your days in college and you'll say, oh, I'm so glad that I learned this. This has stayed with me forever. And, oh yeah, that was really fun, really interesting, a learning experience. And yet, those are no longer values, ethics, choices, decisions that I still hold. That will be up to you. For example, for me in college, one of my core principles, you could say, was pretty much, what's the bare minimum I need to do to get an A? I was one of those bare minimum students. I liked getting A's. I wanted to get A's. But the idea of education for the sake of education was totally lost on me. The idea of sincerity in whatever you're doing, even if it's not something that you are interested in or think has value, but lost on me. Things not for my major, take them pass, fail. Why put in all the time to get an A if it doesn't matter? You don't need it, take it pass, fail. Get an A in everything else, but do it with the bare minimum amount of work. And spend as much time as you possibly can having fun, exploring, hanging out with people, sunbathing on the deck of the dorm, all of that kind of stuff. Now, I'm very glad that I had those opportunities. I wouldn't change anything in retrospect for that age. And yet, I'm also very glad that those are no longer the principles that I live by. I'm very glad that as my life has gone by, I have developed a love for fully showing up to whatever the moment requires, even if I think it's utterly and completely useless. Because there is a value in showing up. If you're going to do it, show up fully. If you can't show up fully, don't do it. And that's very different from the values that I had in university, for example. So what I would say to you is, you come from a culture that is extraordinarily rich, that has extraordinary meaning, extraordinary power, a culture to which people from all over the world, people raised Christians, people raised Jews, people raised atheists, people raised so many other different types of ways of thinking, are actually turning to for answers, turning to for the science, the art, the way of yoga, of meditation, of philosophy, of Ayurveda, of whatever it is. So many people. There is a richness in your culture, in your sanskaras, that you may not be able to see at this time because you've been so immersed in it for so long and it feels so different from the freedom that you're experiencing in college. So I'd say, let yourself be in college as you are. It's wonderful. Have all of those experiences. Try on all of the different ways of being. This is the time for that. But recognize that it's very likely that as you grow, more and more, maybe not all, but more and more of these cultural values, you will actually grow to realize the inherent value in them and the inherent benefit in them. Not necessarily all of them. In Indian culture, definitely some of the values, ethics, ways of being are overlapping with social mores, you could say, that pertained to, for example, small villages in India several generations ago. And they were exactly the right way to be at that time in those places, and that's what so many of our grandparents, great-grandparents, maybe even parents grew up in. You're living in a society, in a world that's different. So you may find that there's not a complete transferability, that some of them are social mores that don't necessarily pertain to you. But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Because the reason that we speak about this Dharma as Sanatan Dharma is that it's eternal, in time and in space. It's just as applicable, beneficial, powerful today as thousands of years ago. Just as applicable and beneficial and important in every city of America, every city of Europe, England, all over the world, as it is in India. But you don't have to figure it all out now. Just when you come here, instead of feeling uncomfortable or judging, just allow yourself to be an observer. Observe, notice. One thing you'll notice is people here are a lot happier than people in America. And from a purely academic, scientific standpoint, that's a very interesting fact to note. That even though we may look at things and say, oh, that's so not how I would do it, not what I would think I would want. And yet, the end result is actually a much deeper happiness than the vast majority of people in the West have, even who have much more money, much more external success, much more freedom on a cultural level, many fewer social mores, So just notice it. Be an academic observer. Notice the way families work. Notice people's values. Notice what's important to them. Notice what motivates them. Notice how frequently they lose their temper or get really frustrated or upset compared to the people you see every day in America. When I walk back into America, it shocks me every time. The quickness and the ease and the ridiculousness over the things that people there are losing their tempers over. And what it shows me is that what we call san shakti, that ability to accept, to tolerate, to sit in the presence of challenging, difficult situations, is dissipating in a tragically rapid rate there. So let yourself, while you're here, don't judge. You're going back anyway. Nobody's telling you gotta, move to a village in India right now. But just allow yourself to really observe this eternal value system and way of life, and what is it in there that is of great benefit to everyone, including you, regardless of where you live, regardless of what your lifestyle is going to be. Because you don't have to adopt it all, but don't disregard it all either, or you're going to find yourself feeling very empty inside. Yeah, wonderful question. And yes. Namaste.
I'm Maria, and I'm coming from Greece. My today question is, as I'm crossing this spiritual path and I'm making my effort daily to keep my balance, to follow the principles of yoga and of those beautiful spiritual culture, when I am with my very close and beloved people, that they are not in that path, and of course they are very good souls, but daily they challenge me through different reactions of negativity, misery, complaining for so many things about the life, about the financial issues, about the government, about this and about that. And sometimes I find myself to be in balance and to be tolerate and I can hear, but if it is daily and every time the same and the same, I find myself to lose my level of balance.
Yes, I
And I'm
understand.
wondering if it is something that I can do and to deal with that.
Beautiful. Get new friends.
It's
Really,
close.
I know it's easier said than done, and I don't mean it to be flippant, but ultimately, this is the power of what we call Sangha, the power of association. You're right. It's very difficult to hold on to your spiritual thoughts, your spiritual emphasis, your spiritual way of being, surrounded by people who are materialistic, negative, judgmental, complaining. It is why we emphasize so much who you associate with. There's nothing wrong with outgrowing friends. We outgrow our clothes when we grow, when we're children and we grow. Kids, every few months, they need new shoes, they need new clothes, they're on growth spurts. Nothing wrong with that. Growth is good. And sometimes when we grow, there are friends who don't fit anymore. And that doesn't mean that you should insult them or be rude to them or tell them you can't be my friend anymore. But it just means slowly, spend less time with them. Slowly, give less of your energy into that space. Some of your friends, I'm sure, will be ones you can keep. Because remember, the power of the group is very powerful. And if there's a few people who are negative, who are super materialistic, who are gossipy, who are judgmental, they tend to kind of pollute and taint the whole batch. See which of your friends are a little bit more inclined spiritually like you are, and start reaching out to them and spending time with them separately, rather than with the ones who are on such an opposite side. And it doesn't mean never see them, but it means when you see them, go prepared. Go prepared. Make sure you've done your meditation. Zip up your spiritual wetsuit that I talk about so that you're living in your peace and your joy, even surrounded by their negativity, right? Like the wetsuit keeps us warm. So we have a spiritual wetsuit that we zip up if you're going to go into situations like that. But do it very consciously, like knowing I'm now going into this situation. I'm not going to let their negativity impact me. Like I'm going scuba diving, but I'm not going to let the cold ocean give me hypothermia. That's what I have a wetsuit for. And also, you can only stay in a certain amount of time. There's practices you do. In the same way, when you see those people, see them for shorter periods of time. See them maybe in situations where their negativity isn't so much. Go to a movie together. They're happy, you've spent some time together, but you're not actually listening to them. Instead, you're enjoying a beautiful movie together. Choose things in which it's not like you're having to swim in their negative energy. And don't feel badly about getting new friends.
I'm feeling bad because it's family. Speaking about the brother, cousin, sister.
Yeah. If you come and sit and have dinner with all of our team and family who live here, what you'll find is we all have the same stories. Anybody who embarks on a powerful spiritual path, inevitably, there are going to be family members who don't get it. There are going to be family members who want to live a different way. And of course, because you're on a spiritual path, maybe they'll even try to provoke you Sometimes that also happens. Sometimes they just trigger you. But this is part of the package deal. It happens to spiritual people all over the world. And the same thing applies. Just because they're your family doesn't mean that you have to spend that much time and energy with them. Love them. Have compassion for them. Don't criticize them. Don't cut them off completely. But make sure to take care of your energy. You know, the way that I always think about this is if you think back to the COVID pandemic. Imagine that someone in your house got COVID. You didn't kill them. You didn't hate them. You didn't yell at them. But you also didn't spend time in the same room together. You planned it very well, right? They would come out for a certain amount of time. They'd wear a mask if they had to get something. And you'd make sure you weren't in the room at that time. Because you knew, I don't want to get sick. Right? It's not that you hate them or you're mean to them or you kill them or you cut their bedroom off the house and you send it down the driveway. It's not that. But you also have to protect yourself. And in the same way, have compassion for them, have love for them, but protect yourself. Your spiritual energy is just as important as your physical body. So take the same precautions that you would have against someone who is physically sick to keep yourself well. Take those same spiritual precautions.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Last for today. We'll take this as our last question today, and then, yes.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. My name is Dr. Ravirat. I'm basically a practicing medical doctor. I came from South India, Tirupati. There we used to have this same from Adi Shankar Acharyaji that Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Modamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati, Dukhil Karane. This was the ring every time and then in our place. But still, we are in a materialistic world. I have got a doubt. As a guru from that asana, I expect a small answer from you that from zygote level, they say Andanda, Brahmanda, that's a universal level. The zygote itself is representative of the whole universe. That was being given by some gurus that I overheard during my educational journey, whatever you call. But medical science doesn't accept all this stuff. Medical science has got some norms. As you said, COVID has got some norms. Later on, once we came to know that the philosophy of Adi Shankar Acharya was being accepted through and through by the whole world, and whatever he was, he preached in 13th century at that time, and now whatever we call Sanatana Dharma was going on, I used to contemplate between these two theories. Then I came to know that I was in the middle.
Can you just share what the question is specifically?
The question is, does that Shankaracharya theory is directly significant to this theory of the zygote as well as the universe?
I'm sorry, repeat the question again. Does the Shankaracharya?
He told that Samprapte Sannihite Kale Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukhil Karane. That was being given by him, right, for all the disciples, Pam. Later on, our science has evolved so much that from zygote level, Anda to Brahmanda, they say that that's the universe that is existing in zygote itself.
Yes, yes.
But the scientific theory is accepting that. And of course, the community as per se, they are not even accepting that.
Okay. What the Shankaracharya has taught us, I'm going to simplify this for everybody's benefit. The Shankaracharya gave beautiful, beautiful, beautiful teachings that are primarily focused on the teaching of oneness. There is nothing but God. One, ultimate oneness. Oneness of people. He walked south to north of India, uniting the people. and a oneness of us and the divine. And gave you these teachings around. As is the inner, so is the outer. From a scientific perspective, though, you're looking at it from you've mixed up physical reality. A zygote is an actual physical thing taking place in the fallopian tubes of a woman. Like you could dissect her and literally extract a zygote from that. You could look at it under a microscope. It is made of matter, which means it is part of that which we consider Maya. So what you've done is you've pulled an example from this philosophy and you've compared it to the one other piece of the ultimate philosophy. Now, you're not going to be able to find in this world of created Maya that which is Brahman. I say Aham Brahmasmi. You could take my fingernail, you could dissect it every which way, you could look at it under any possible magnifying glass or microscope or scientific type of equipment that you want. You're not going to see Brahman in there. You're not going to see the universe in there. You're not going to see divinity in there. You're going to see all kinds of cells. I'm not a biologist. I couldn't tell you exactly what type of cells you'll see, but biologists could tell you. You'll see something that a biologist would say, oh, that's a fingernail. When we say Aham Brahmasmi, it doesn't mean I don't have a fingernail. What it means is I am not the fingernail. Who I am, the core of me, that of me which is not Maya. That of me which is never born and never dies. A zygote is born, a zygote dies. Develops, changes along the way, and hopefully. Some of them die without ever changing. That's not what we're talking about. That of you which is one with the universe, which is creation, which is existence itself. It's not the physical body. It's not the sperm, it's not the egg, it's not the zygote, it's not the embryo, it's not the fetus, it's not the newborn, it's not the adult. Nowhere along the way is that physical creation equivalent to existence itself. The physical world is what, according to the Advaita Vedanta tradition, is considered to be Maya, the whole creation. Because according to Advaita philosophy, all there is that capital S self. It is all happening like in a dream. Like when you wake up in the morning and you realize there was actually nothing that I saw, just me lying in my bed. It all happened in me. That philosophy is all of this, all of what I'm experiencing, from fingernail to everything, rewind all the way back to zygote, fast forward all the way into human. It's all happening in that capital M eternal me that is indistinguishable from, inseparable from the divine. But on this level of existence, this physical existence, call it Maya. And yet, we have these bodies, we have these karmic packages in the same treatise, the same Bhagavad Gita that reminds us you are not the body, reminds us you are that which is not born and never dies. Same teaching. We are told how to live. So just because you're not the body doesn't mean we don't have very specific duties and dharmas to the body, to this incarnated existence. So just because it is quote unquote Maya doesn't mean that it is less important. But it is not what you could consider the highest truth, which is that existence. Does that make sense? Good. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. A beautiful day to our family joining us from all over the world. And so much love to you all.